we are back on the couch. Wow, Oscar, welcome to Our Favorite Accident.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
I'm here with my co-host Madoka.
Hello.
I'm Greg, and today we have my favorite restaurant in all of New York City. Oscar is the owner of La Loncheria, which is in Bushwick. He's had many restaurants in New York City, and this is their latest endeavor. And besides that, Oscar is a superstar DJ, and hopefully when this COVID's over, he'll be back on the tables and he'll be spinning some superstar cumbia. And let's get into it. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Beautiful place you have.
I'm excited. So our show's called Our Favorite Accident. Or it's my favorite accident.
My
right?
favorite accident.
Or is it our favorite accident? It's everybody's accident.
Everybody's accident, yeah.
And you know, I heard, I guess through some talk or whatever, that the restaurant business is your accident. You want to expand on that a little bit, or?
Sure. Yeah. I guess that's the biggest accident. I didn't move to New York with the intention of owning restaurants or running restaurants or working at restaurants. I moved here. It's probably 15 years ago. And I moved here to study a PhD program in anthropology, in cultural anthropology at the Graduate Center.
Wow.
And at the time, I had a lot of friends who were musicians or DJs or producers or promoters in Mexico. And I was interested in looking at narratives around national belonging and how these play out in music that's thought of as non-traditional, like, rock bands and, DJs and, whatever.
And so how they were like mixing, let's say, like Mexican flavors with American music.
Sure, yeah. Right. I mean, because I think at the time there was a much more rigid idea of what Mexican music or Mexican identity or Mexico was like. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it wasn't like that because I traveled back and forth and I stay in both places, and I knew that there was a lot going on, and that the way people understood their nationality was different than what people might think looking at it from the outside. But
we want to hear how you fucked up. Okay?
Well, so I was doing this.
So you were
and
born in Mexico City, right?
I was born in Mexico City. Born and raised in Mexico City. I moved to California when I was in high school, or just about to start high school, because I wanted to be closer to my father. Well, I wanted to get to know my father better. My father was a great painter from the northern state of Sonora in Mexico, from the border, from Nogales. And he had a very interesting life, but he ended up living in the Bay Area in California. And I went, and I guess the first accident was the fact that I was only gonna stay there for maybe a year, and then everything changed back home in Mexico, and I ended up staying with my father and ended up doing high school and college in California.
Wow.
But when I moved to New York City, my intention was to go through school and then do my field work, do my writing, complete a PhD, and hopefully find work in a university.
So the original draw to New York was to go for university. That was
I wanted to go. I was very interested in the program at the Graduate Center, and I was very excited about being there.
What year was that?
That was 2000. It's been 15 years. We're in 2020. It might have been like 2000.
That's about.
Yeah, like I don't know.
With COVID, we've all lost track of time.
Lost track completely.
It's so much, isn't it, right?
Completely lost track. But the thing is, remember that the first big crisis, the economic meltdown of 2008, just completely was, changed everything.
Yeah.
At the time, my wife Isel was working with the guy who's now my partner, Chef Danny Mena, great chef, and his partner Ethan Smith, and they had this pop-up, Echo and Dumbo,
Which
in
I've
Dumbo.
been to.
The one
I read so much
that you
about
went
that
to.
place. I had to check it out, and I liked it.
So for our viewers that don't know what Dumbo is, I guess it was renamed by the real estate agents, and they were calling it down underneath the Manhattan Bridge overpass.
Right.
And I remember going back to Dumbo even in the early '90s. I looked at a loft over there, and there was nothing. It was super nothing.
It's a very industrial area, really but it has this beautiful, view of the city, and you could tell. And I think that movie, Once Upon a Time in America, has a famous scene under that bridge, right, where they stab or there's a killing of this. So
So you opened up H.O. and Dumbo in Dumbo and.
No, he did it. The Danny.
Danny did.
Yeah,
Danny
my
did.
partner Danny and his partner, and then Isel started working there.
Okay.
And it was funny. They had this they posted this job posting that described the position that they wanted, but also said if you happen to be from Mexico City and you have knowledge of contemporary Mexico City as a culture and scenes,
Right.
and I was like, Giselle, this job is
That's perfect.
obviously made for you.
Right.
And she wrote to them and she went and they loved her and they became a very tight team. And I would go and DJ like on the weekends and eat there all the time. And at the time it just became this place of a lot of contact and a lot of, all these like Mexico City and Mexican creatives, I guess, or whatever you would call it,
Right.
Would meet up and hang out, and there were great parties and everybody was very young and it was a lot of fun. And then,
which you still have at Loncheria today. I feel every
Loncheria,
time I go to Loncheria, it's
there's some kind of events.
I'm always your wife or someone is introducing me to another creative, and I think that's something that that you guys attract and your restaurants attract.
Yeah, no, and so at the time when when the pop-up it had a great level of success. There was a write-up about it, and then they decided that they were gonna go for it and try to open it in Manhattan. And so my wife and I had some.
Find a nice location on Bowery.
Yeah, they found a place on the Bowery.
Yeah,
They asked us if we wanted to be a part of it. We had everything we had saved. We pretty much put in that restaurant.
Wow.
Which at the time, I can't remember how much it was, but it was like pretty much everything we had saved, and we gave it to them.
What year?
This was 10 years ago.
Sounds about right.
2010 or so. Okay. So we made the move to the Bowery. I wasn't planning on working there. I just figured that'd be an investment for the future, and if the place did well, then the money would come back to me and with some profit.
Right.
And who knows? I had no idea how this thing.
It sounds more like Danny kind of suckered you in.
In a way.
You and your wife in and be like, oh, you got some money?
I had no idea how the restaurant world worked. I just knew that there were constant write-ups and people were very excited about the project, and it felt very organic and very real, very genuine. But it was then the meltdown of 2008 happened. And I was at the time working in research, social research around like drug addiction and around alcoholism, and then around just different health issues, and I would just do research. I was doing a bunch of interviews all through the city, and that's how I find, how I paid rent, and that's how I was working, and that's how I would write and read for the PhD program at night. And I was trying to secure a grant so I could then go do my field work, et cetera, all the stuff one does as a grad student. And then as it turned out, I couldn't secure any money. I couldn't finish. I couldn't keep a job. And I ended up on unemployment for a long time.
Wow.
And then I figured, I have this money invested in this restaurant. My wife is the manager. Maybe I should ask for a job.
Yeah, you think they'd give you one?
And after a very,
can I wash dishes?
So after a very tough,
What job did you get?
well, after this very tough interview, I ended up as a runner, and then eventually, server and bartender and manager. But the thing was like, it was supposed to be temporary. It was just gonna be while I found something, just so we could pay the rent, and it just little by little sucked me in. Then I went to run another place that my partner opened. And then he opened this place called Sembrado here in the East Village. Okay. And then by that time I was running the place, and I figured, there's something that isn't quite clicking with what we want to do here. And at the time we had just moved to Bushwick. Mm-hmm. And I liked the Bushwick of that time a lot. There were maybe only 3 places that were, very good cocktails.
Like 2008, 2009.
Yeah. And I thought, I think people will get what we're trying to do with Sembrado, what we did with Djng. I think in Bushwick is the right spot to do it right now.
Right.
And then we started looking for a place, and we found a spot, and we opened Loncheria 2.5 years ago. So now, as an owner, I partnered up with Danny, and that's how Loncheria came to be.
Right. Well, even Djng, I remember. Didn't you guys acquire the downstairs? You had a performance space, and you were having a lot of different artists, not just Mexican artists, right? But a lot of.
Exactly. What was really nice, there were all these performances when at Djng when Djng was a pop-up, and because I was studying this PhD and I had all these friends in Mexico, and both Isel and I. whenever they were in town, they would contact us, and that would be, why don't you do a DJ set? Why don't you come and hang out? And some of these people were pretty well known in Mexico, you know, and they would come and do these DJ sets or these performances that were kind of spontaneous and with very little, because we didn't have obviously a backline or anything like that.
Right.
We would find equipment, and it was a lot of fun. And so one of the ideas for the place at Djng Dumbo on the Bowery was to have a place that would actually have space for actual performances, and we opened Salon Hecho, or rather Danny and Ethan opened Salon Hecho, and then I became someone that would book all these music.
Salon Hecho was the downstairs.
The basement,
Okay.
the next door, the adjacent space.
Okay.
Then there was downstairs, there was like a sort of a dive bar that I don't think is there anymore. The Bowery completely changed. It went back
it's so
to kind of
changed.
I mean, it changed. I thought it was going to be the next like meatpacking district, and now I think it's back to its original Bowery where it's just deserted.
Bowery's bar.
I got a loft with a friend in 1998 on Bowery and Broome, 138 Bowery. And it was really, really hopping back then. I remember Lenny Kravitz had a club on the Bowery, and some really good restaurants within there. And even like in Nolita, and like everybody was like going to Rice or going to
Bowery's a nice mixture of things.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think HO really gave a lot to that.
How long were you on the Bowery location? Then?
Well, so yeah, it was. How long did Hecho go for? Probably 10 years. It just closed right around the time we opened Loncheria.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Probably 2 years ago.
Wow.
It closed. But a lot of things change. I think what happened is, as usual, developers and people who own buildings get, very excited and greedy. And the rents just go,
go crazy.
And then they expect that this is going to go on forever, and then it didn't. They kind of like, I would say, strangled the life out of the people who made the Bowery.
Who made the Bowery, right?
And this is probably the eternal New York story around.
It's happened to me every time.
Mom and pop will forever.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you wanted to renew, were you thinking about renewing your lease on the Bowery at the time, or?
Yeah. Well, the rent was crazy. For the space
from the beginning. I mean, I remember
it was crazy.
I remember your sister-in-law telling me like you're paying X amount of dollars, and I was like,
yeah, no, it was crazy. It was crazy.
I was like, are you guys doing like 300 seatings a night? I mean,
that's the thing. When you're new and everyone's excited about what you're doing, of course, like it looks, the future looks bright. But once you're, like your time has passed in the sense that you're an established place and people respect what you do and like what you do, but you're no longer the new.
And you kid in town.
Exactly.
Right.
And somebody else is then, like Cosme comes and, Enrique Olvera from Mexico City opens up. And of course, like, who's going to compete with him? The New York Times names it the restaurant of the year, whatever.
Going for a Cosme dinner and going for an Djng Dumbo dinner, I mean, two different things, but
two very different types
two different types of products.
I'm glad that we have both in this city.
Exactly. No, I think what Enrique Olvera did was amazing. Cosme and Atla are amazing places, but I just think it points to there's always going to be something new.
Exactly.
Right.
There's always going to be someone that comes in and is hungry, and New York is always looking for that. And what I wanted to do with Loncheria, my idea with Loncheria was completely different. I was like, let's retreat to being just a neighborhood restaurant, because when all the writing about the place is done, when whatever has happened, then it's only going to be your neighbors who keep you alive, who keep you going by, going to your place and having Mescal there and having food. And then, I think it's much more desirable to be a small neighborhood spot than someone who is sort of like a destination,
I do want to elaborate on how the pandemic and our current situation with our mayor and our government is treating the restaurant business, because I feel like the whole inner like heart and vibe of Loncheria was the bar, okay? And now you can't have seating inside. You can only have seating outside. Yeah. So,
which is a beautiful space, which is a great part of the restaurant.
Oh, it's a great part of the restaurant.
Yeah.
But they specialize in mixology and different mezcals, and all that. And I mean, I would really call it a mezcal bar. I mean,
It is a mezcal bar.
course,
I mean, you know, what we do is we wanted to create a space that would be exciting enough for my partner, who's a chef, to create this, food, Mexican food based on just classics, very accessible food, tortas, tacos, what people expect,
but super fresh. It's super good.
and allow him to be, and allow him to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, not just to make a, because if you're a Mexican place in New York, people are gonna say your authenticity is based on how cheap you are. This is an idea. That's
like,
always like. I mean, I think it's changing. Fortunately, thanks to people like
Like
Enrique Olvera, thanks to Djng,
exactly.
but mostly, like it's changing.
Some people
But-
refuse like high-end Mexican place.
Exactly.
Some
And
people
We've had
refuse-
these conversations
some people
before.
refuse,
Even
those like high-end Chinese place too.
yeah,
You know,
I was going
yeah,
to say that also.
yeah.
Like I mean, Chinese. Until Mr. Chow opened, or maybe in the 70s
Well,
or
that-
something, but
Yeah,
like,
that's a different kind of a ballpark,
Right.
But, yeah, but
And there's always, this. I mean, people might think that they're defending sort of like the working class element of Mexican food, and but in a sense, there's an element of racism.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like
of course.
if you're French, you're allowed to charge whatever you want if you put a tiny snail with a. But if you're Mexican and you put something on a tortilla, or you put something, or no matter what,
like a
no matter the
street
amount of
food.
time it takes to
Right.
create, it should be cheap, and that's how you know it's authentic. And that's, something that's it's just a horrible way to be judged,
Right, of
this,
course.
yeah.
But I think people, I think it's changing. In Bushwick, it's a little different because there's a lot of young people, aspiring artists, aspiring musicians who obviously are strapped for money. So we try to create a space that's also accessible to them. You can go in and have some tacos and a mezcal and a beer and leave and not spend that much money, or you can come in and ask for, a wild agave, a tepestate that, where there might have only been, 10 liters, distilled from this mezcal, and is of course is expensive because it's very rare, and
Right.
you can go in and do that, but we wanted to leave it open so that people could just not spend a lot of money. That's the idea.
they
Or
can.
go in and
They
have
can,
something very rare that
Yeah.
that even some of the best mezcal places in I would say we have one of the and not to brag, but I think it's one of the best mezcalerias in New York.
I think so as well. Yeah.
We have every type of agave you could think, and then we also have, raicillas and bacanoras and all these other Mexican distilled spirits, and also liqueurs, and and then we can make whatever, and then we try to also focus on like Mexican artisanal beer, things like that,
Right.
craft beer. I mean, we carry, of course, all the brands that people know, but then we also have like a couple of brands that are, craft beers that you would only find for the most part, you only find in Mexico, and that's what that's the focus. Try to do both. Same thing with the music, as we did with Buwery and Dumbo, and then at Loncheria too. We've developed like a very cool friendship with a lot of like the Latin American sort of diaspora that keeps like all these vinyl collectors that have all this like very rare cumbia, and they come to Loncheria. Well, before this pandemic, they would come to Loncheria and have these DJ sets, and then would bring all this like 45s of like very obscure.
Yeah, I mean, you're one of the
cumbia
few-
labels.
You're-
What's
you know.
cumbia?
Cumbia is from Colombia. It's a type of music, and I won't go into it, but it's from Colombia. But slowly it grew to be this sort of like Latin American working class music that a lot of people have experimented with and revisited. And from
It's
Colombia,
like a contemporary music.
you
has
find
history,
cumbia from the
yeah.
60s.
Yeah.
It's an Afro Latin rhythm. But it came from Colombia, moved through different working class, neighborhoods in all these different cities. Like in Peru, it spun this like very cool psychedelic style known as chicha. In Mexico, there's cumbia sonidera, which is what there's cumbia poblana, and then it took a different form and sort of like absorbed local roots in every place that it touched.
Right.
And like salsa's from New York, but then salsa sounds different, in
Well,
Colombia.
salsa's really from
sounds-
Puerto Rico, though, no? Was it really more?
Salsa's really from New York.
It's really- yeah.
It comes from
I
Boogaloo.
didn't
Yeah,
know
it's
that,
a New
actually.
York.
didn't know that.
It's a New York form of music. It comes from Boogaloo.
Right. And would you say
the sort of like merging of soul and Cuban music
so?
that
Would you
Puerto
say it was
Ricans
like
brought
Tito,
to the city?
Tito Puente and who are some of like the forefathers of
Tito
like
Puente.
of New York salsa? Yeah,
Yeah.
Tito, definitely
But
Tito
I think
Puente.
it's like, I didn't know that salsa is New York music. I
It's
thought
New
it
York
was-
music.
I thought it was from Puerto Rico
It's
originally.
that's what I
it's
thought
it's the
too.
music of Puerto Rican migrants in the 1950s and
Yorkers.
60s.
It's but it's Nuyorican, 116th Street.
It's
right?
the way they listen to the music that they always had in the island and the Cuban music that they listened to, and what they did with that music, being kids of the people who migrated to work in factories in New York and encountering the black music at the time, the soul, and then just coming up with this amazing sounds.
So how would you differentiate cumbia from salsa?
I think cumbia in a sense is more economic and tight, and it's a little, it's almost like think of it as dub, it
Right.
has that, but and it has that the Colombian roots of cumbia
Okay.
are undeniable, but ultimately it's the blending of, it's the influence of African music on Latin America, on the African diaspora, just creating beautiful music.
I bet you can't wait to DJ again, huh?
No, it's fun. It's very fun. And there's like all these, and there's this network of DJs in Bushwick that's really cool. People who came here when they were little kids, and then some people who just came to New York City, and there's a very nice scene, of this really cool friendships and people who very supportive of Loncheria, and they come and DJ, and for our anniversary we always have some band or some DJ that's like playing that stuff that's really like amazing, like this obscure 45s from whatever label, and from this obscure Peruvian and Colombian and Ecuadorian labels from who knows where. It's really cool. That's the part I miss a lot with this pandemic, where now we can't have people at the bar, and we obviously have to we have to make sure people are safe. We have to make sure our staff is safe. We have to make sure the customers who keep coming to the restaurant are safe. We only use the patio, and it's changed everything. And it's the summer, and we're able to do it, and I'm grateful because it's our lifeline. But you wanted to know like how this pandemic. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, in the fall, in the winter, when things start cooling
I
down.
guess nobody knows, right?
No one knows.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat, I guess.
But I just can't imagine. I mean, I can understand the safety and the protection of individuals, but they're going to have to at least like let you operate at a 50% volume or something.
It's
no?
not going to be 50%. Like when we reopen the indoor, it's going to be like 33%, right?
I think
First.
so.
And then probably, eventually, gradually go to 50%. So it's not going to be 50%
Right.
immediately.
And that brings its own problems,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that what tables do we use? What protocols do we use now? I mean, the outside, there's circulating air. What happens when it gets cool and we have to close the doors, and then we have people inside? It's going to be complicated.
Yeah.
It's going to be very complicated.
So what's the problem with Trump right now?
Everything.
Well, we're gonna have a very interesting conversation. Not for the podcast, but Isel and they want to have this conversation because there's this version in Mexico circulating about who's better for Mexico,
Yeah, okay.
Biden or Trump.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think Trump will
Is
be
better.
better than
Why?
for Mexico.
Really? Well,
It's-
as far as economics?
It's a very bizarre
Tell me more.
theory for me. Well, because for some reason, Obrador, who's on the left, and Trump, who's a fascist and a psychopath,
Yeah.
have a good working relationship.
Really
and-
though? Really?
And I think it's been because Trump is an asshole and a bully. So, for instance, he was like, if you don't stop migrants from crossing the border, we're going to impose, 50%
Like
taxes
sanctions.
on anything that comes in.
Right.
And Obrador has an amazing foreign relations guy. His name is Ebrard. And Ebrard came and was like, let's chill. Let's talk. And Obrador understands that what Trump likes is to have his ego stroke.
Yeah.
Right. That's all.
So
That's what
Obrador
we
is
want.
like, I love talking to Mr. Trump. The respect is given to us. The respect is given to us. He came to thank Trump for selling Mexico these ventilators. But really what was going on there, it was like Obrador came to get something out of that.
Yeah.
And he got a lot. He got a lot from Trump. And Trump, he shut the fuck up. He let Obrador talk. Obrador came and talked at the White House and yelled and screamed "Viva Mexico" 3 times.
Nice.
I don't think anybody's ever done that.
Okay.
And Trump for the first, Trump has never shut his mouth. And everyone in Mexico, the right wing was like, Obrador's fucking up. Trump was gonna humiliate him. That didn't happen. They have a weird working relationship. Kind of like when you gotta work with somebody you don't really like, but you have to, like.
Can I ask you this? I mean, do you think that as much as Trump wants to bring back work to the United States and have manufacturing in the United States, it's really never going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
It's too expensive.
And he doesn't want it to happen, really.
And no Americans actually want to have those jobs.
They don't want to have
They don't want to have those jobs.
And he doesn't want to even bring it back. He's just talking. I mean, he's a mobster.
So do you think Trump, sees that, there's cheaper labor in Mexico. Maybe I should have a good relationship with Mexico because
obviously.
Then we can move some of our industry there.
Trump has a very limited geopolitical view.
Right.
He knows he has to stop China for as long as he can. But if he's smart, or if he has any sense, he knows it's not doable. China is the new superpower. Once a superpower is ascending, you cannot stop them. Right. The British, the Germans, they all found out. They all experienced it themselves. When the U.S. was going to be the superpower, no one could stop the U.S. Right. After World War II. Even the Soviets, who were like badasses and like fucking defeated the Germans and like went through industrialization faster than anybody's done it, even they couldn't stop the U.S. And the U.S. knows China is unstoppable, but they're trying to like keep it as long as they can. Right. And that's why Trump is like the whole TikTok ridiculous thing.
Ridiculous.
I was just reading today
Who the fuck cares?
I was just reading today that now Walmart, there's a bidding war because I think Microsoft is going to buy it. And now I think Walmart is like put a bid in
but
to
I'm
buy
sure
TikTok
the Chinese
as well.
are probably like just looking at it like, you fucking savages, you barbarians. Okay, whatever. Buy TikTok. We're gonna move on to artificial intelligence.
I mean, but do you really think that like TikTok has like some kind of conspiracy theory, like they're spying on us? I mean, anybody's gonna spy.
Everybody's spying on everybody.
Anyway.
Right? The moment you pick up,
listen, I'm spying on you right now. I've got 4 cameras in front of you.
Our iPhones are all listening to us.
Of course.
No, because it's China-based. That's what it matters to Trump. It's not. He doesn't think. He doesn't care if it's like.
But when people talk, the U.S. loves talking about like, pull yourself by the bootstraps. China in the 1950s, 60s, like most people were starving. After the revolution, and they tried to bring some justice, but it was a country of peasants, right, that were trying to survive, and they had famines. And look at them now, like a superpower. Yeah. Artificial intelligence. People have like money to spend on like whatever they want. Like in a matter of what? How long did it take the U.S.? 300, 400 years? It took China, 50 years?
It was less than 50 years.
Come on. You have to like admire that and just be like, wow. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. But Trump, wants to do whatever they can. And Mexico is now, I think, understood that.
No, Trump cannot do anything he wants to do. He's a fucking president of the United States. He has limits. He thinks that he can do anything he wants to do, but he can't.
Right.
He can't. And he's a mobster. And also, to be honest, like the bi-coastal elites that he complains about, which I think
That's
are
us. That's us.
But in a sense, they are real, though. Like the Bidens and the Clintons. I mean, they think they can just run the world, and it's like fuck them too. Like. They're hawks, and they've.
So it's. I mean, I always look at it as okay, the Republicans, the Democrats, they're just as bad. Each side is bad.
Yeah.
I just think that they needed a little humbling
experience.
experience.
If you have to choose like a side.
But I think they needed a
if
little
I was going
humbling.
to choose anybody, I'd choose Andrew Yang.
Yang.
Well, I would choose. I mean, if I had to pick anyone within it would be Biden and Ocasio-Cortez, who's, by the way, super attractive. So
we all love her.
Who would argue?
Even Trump said she is like beauty. Did you hear? Did you read any?
Really?
Yeah. Trump said like recently.
He probably had to shut up and just
But
look at her.
but she's
feisty.
she's really out there fighting for for the working class of people,
I
and
think
that's
so,
what I love.
And
about
I
her.
have to say, she's a much better messenger than Bernie.
Yeah.
I
mean, she's angry.
Well, it's
She's
also
very-
the age, though. Like,
No,
I mean,
but
it's the.
she knows how to reach people. She is not all angry all the time. I mean, I love,
No, she makes fun of people. I mean, I think the perfect example is when they try to make laugh at her for dancing in college, and she was like, "Oh, like girls dancing," and then she like,
make fun of her.
and then she goes
dancing
and then
now,
she
you
goes
know?
into her office like, and does a little dance and like pose. She knows she's that generation, like.
I was listening to some podcast the other day, and they really said that AOC has the grip on technology and how she's promoting herself through Zoom videos
Not technology, the social media.
and social
knows.
media.
Not
She has 100% grasp on it.
Oh, yeah.
I think she's
the best. She's the
she's
best
doing
in
a
it.
fantastic job.
Yeah. Her Instagram story, anything.
No, she knows.
Yeah,
She knows
she
exactly
knows,
what she's doing. She's very good, and I'm glad. We need somebody with that sort of like.
So I just want to finish this thought on Biden and Trump. So you really think if Biden got elected, do you think the relations would be different, huh?
A lot of people think that the U.S. that if Biden is elected, he's going to be very pissed at Mexico because Obrador came to talk to Trump.
Right.
I think that's ridiculous because heads of state talk to each other, and the head of state, according to the elections and the electoral colleges, which is ridiculous, is Trump. And the Mexican president has to talk to him. I also think that is an asymmetrical relationship. Mexico could never, ever, ever punish the U.S. The U.S. could destroy the Mexican economy in a day.
In a day, right.
So Mexico understands that.
I think in a way, this pandemic is like a biggest accident for like many of us, most of us probably, right? And the same for like restaurateurs like you. So how did you adjust to it so far?
Oh, well, the pandemic, I can remember like March 14th or so. My partner sent me a text and he was like, we have to open 50% capacity or whatever. And I looked at it and I was like, what do you mean 50% capacity? How are we going to do that? And then I went to the restaurant, I get there, and then we're being inspected by the Department of Health. If you own a restaurant, being inspected by the Department of Health is the scariest thing. They can shut you down and they can just like come down on you for all these reasons. And you would hope that they would, I get that you have to have the safety of your consumer, and you have to take that very seriously. But as someone that owns a restaurant, I have to say the Department of Health doesn't do that. What they do is they terrorize you, and you end up getting hit with all these fees and all these like what do you call it? All these penalties,
fines.
all these fines, and you don't really get advice on how to do things better. It's more of like, you did this wrong. We found droppings. And then you're like, yeah, but this is New York City, and the droppings are found in the entrance, and therefore, obviously mice live. No.
Mice is everywhere.
But it's not like that. It's not like they help. It's more of like, we will shut you down. We will shut down the way that you make a living.
Well, don't you think they could at least be like, hey, maybe there should be some kind of organization that could help with like getting restaurants up to, I guess, your A, B, C, D checklist or something like that.
I don't think no one can afford it because restaurant is like really, like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also like the fact that New York City there's different parameters, right? For you're a big restaurateur who owns this restaurant, and you can clean things up in no time. You can hire someone to just make things function perfectly. If you're a small place, you're always struggling, and you're struggling again, in these old buildings that, of course, have a lot of problems. It's very tough, and the Department of the Department of Health, of course, might want to protect the health of New Yorkers. We all hope so, and we all want to, do things as well as we can. But it's very difficult as a small restaurant to comply with everything that they expect, because sometimes it seems like what they want is a restaurant that's not actually operating, almost like, I don't know, a scenery of a restaurant, but not really a restaurant.
So I see that you do a lot of like great cocktails, like great liqueurs and stuff. And are you?
He perfected the what do you call it? The something teeny. What is it?
The
quarantini.
So
You're excellent with your Instagram and your
saw
social media.
Instagram, and you do a lot about true packaging and everything. Those like takeout cocktails. Like early on the quarantine. How did it pan out?
Well, no. I mean, that's how we survived. As I said, I was, like what I was getting into about the Department of Health, and I got sidetracked was the fact that we got inspected the Friday before everything shut down.
Yeah.
And actually, the guy was very nice. He told me the problems with the restaurant, and I was like, okay. Then he left, and all these friends showed up, and I was like, all these friends from Mexico City, my friends who were supposed to perform in town that weekend, and everything they came to do was canceled. And they were just like having all this mezcal at the restaurant, and we were like, then Saturday came around, and then on Sunday they told us, nope, Tuesday is the last day, the 16th, you have to shut down. We shut down from that Monday.
Wow.
And we stayed.
So your friends flew in from Mexico, musicians.
Yeah,
to
friends. They were doing this stuff in, I don't know, if, with the new museum. I forget. They were coming here to do something, and everything got canceled. And we met up at Loncheria, and we had drinks, and we had a great time. And we were all a little nervous about what was coming with the pandemic, but it still seems so far away, And then we got the notice that we all had to shut down on the 16th. That Monday, we shut down the restaurant. Day before, everything had to be shut down.
What was your feeling? Like, what you were like?
I was very nervous.
Like,
I was like, well, what's gonna happen now?
Yeah, of course.
And I don't think any of us thought it was gonna like drag on like this long.
Yeah, like 6 months,
maybe
March, April,
weeks.
like 6 months later.
Yeah,
I
it's
figured-
like six fucking months.
Yeah.
6 months later.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean,
I thought 2 weeks.
Your
3
numbers
weeks.
are what?
Yeah.
Maybe you're doing what 50% of what you were doing with say last summer.
Probably, 70%. Half of what we should be doing. We're operating with less people, a lot less hours.
And most of my friends or anyone I've known, I mean, I worked in the restaurant business. I bartended. The only way you make money is off your bar. Mm-hmm. Like the food, like the market is a little bit, but it's not like you're not really making money off food.
I mean, we're fortunate enough where people like the food and people like the drinks, and we're half and half and everything. It's okay. But at the same time, for instance, yesterday we had a weather warning, and at 8:00, this torrential storm fell in Brooklyn, and that was it. We had to shut down. There was no point on staying open for the last 2 hours.
So you're screwed for the night.
So you're screwed for the night. That's it. You have to just shut it down. And also, like, if your customers are outside and they all of a sudden they rush in, and you have say 10 people who are eating outside with social distancing and everything.
You got a COVID problem there.
But then they rush in and they all want to order mezcal from you, and you're like, I have to stay afloat. I want to sell them all shots and beer and whatever they want.
Yeah, of course.
But then you're like, but if somebody rolls by and reports us as like not complying, or if we put these people at risk inadvertently, we have a responsibility. I can't do it. So you're stuck in the middle. And, the way we survived it, like I said, we closed completely. I remember like we called a guy who had just gotten here from Mexico, and he had just asked me for all these extra shifts because he owed all this money to the guy who basically helped him cross the border.
Wow.
So he was already here with a huge debt because, the guys, I don't know if we can talk about this on the podcast.
I'd love to talk about it.
But when you cross the border, you pay a pollero. They call them pollero. You're like a chicken. And they bring all these chickens in.
Where you're basically just hiding out during the day, and then you're going through the desert at night.
They walk you through the desert, and they say, you owe us this much. And somebody fronts that money for you, a family member, a friend. And it can be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just to cross the border.
Just to cross the border?
Just to cross the border.
So I've heard stories where people are in the desert for like 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, you walk across. I mean, there's different ways of crossing, and it depends how good your pollero. They used to call them coyotes, now they call them polleros.
Right. See.
But it just depends on how good the guy that's gonna help you cross is gonna be. You know, because now cartels are involved, and it's a tragic thing, and it's a very, you know, that's why there's all these like organizations on the border
Well, like,
trying to
what-
leave water for people because you're walking. You know,
What
there's
won't the
people
cartels
walking
get
through the
into?
border.
It's like they're still in the avocado business. Now they're getting into the.
Well, you know, they're capitalists.
they're
Right? They're
capitalists.
ever expanding. You know?
Oh, they're gonna get into any business that makes.
Of course.
Yeah.
So getting back to your friend who was going to work at the restaurant.
Well, he was working there. You know, he was our dishwasher, and maybe 3 days before everything, he was like, "Can you give me more shifts? I need more shifts." And I was like, "Well, you know, you're working construction during the daytime, and now you want to work more shifts at night. You want to do all these doubles. Are you sure you can work 14 hours a day, 6 days a week? You're going to collapse, and you're not going to do a good job
Right.
because you're going to be so exhausted. Are you sure?" He was like, "Yes." So we gave him all the shifts, and then all of a sudden was like, "Well, this is done. We have to shut down." And I called him. I was like, "Well, you know, come by." We emptied out all the food from the walk-ins, from the refrigerators, we had to just pretty much empty everything out, turn off the power, and you know, he called his brother so he could, you know, his brother came to help him, and we gave him as much food as we could because everything was going to go bad. And one of our bartenders, you know, I also asked him to come help us out. I was like, we have to leave this place very clean because obviously if we're going to shut down, who knows what's going to come in here.
Right.
And we shut down. And these two guys took all this food home. I took a bunch of stuff home. You know, it was like just boxes of avocados and limes. But also a lot of,
You're like, we're going to cook for a little while.
we were cooking.
Yeah.
But it just felt like so, it just felt so like, you know, you're not shutting down, but in a sense it's like, what's going to happen next? Are we going to be able to reopen? What's going to come, you know,
Right.
after this?
So how's the pandemic, you know, treating you to?
need my drink.
Oh, okay. So how is the pandemic treating you in terms of like you know, adjusting yourself to the new situation?
Well, it's been rough on every restaurant. I mean,
Yeah,
we
every-
completely
every-
shut down.
yeah.
You know, from March 15th until we started opening around May, and you know, relying on deliveries, which we were doing in house. So basically, Danny was like delivering, and I was making the cocktails, and because the platforms obviously take a lot of money from you.
I mean, can I ask you? I mean, did your landlord kind of subside a little with the rent?
You know,
or
the
did he-
landlord is.
Did he work it out with you?
He's
guys, or-
actually been a very decent guy with us. You know, old school Puerto Rican guy who owns a lot of buildings in Bushwick, and he's actually, you know, like, fortunately, he's been pretty decent with us. In a sense, I'm grateful at the fact that we negotiated with him. So we negotiated with him. Of course, we try to get all these loans. We got some support, very limited, basically to bring people back to work, which we did, because obviously we also wanted to have our stuff back. And then once we set up a way to work, we understood that we had to work less hours. They had to be hours that would make us money, that would allow us to pay staff, that would allow us to bring back the staff that we had, you know, we felt we owe something to, because they're the people who've helped us run the restaurant, and we felt in debt to them, and we wanted to have them back.
Can you
And that's how it's,
elaborate a little more on the federal and state government and how, like, were you or were you not able to get the PPE money? And-
Fortunately, we're able to get the PPP, and we've destined it completely to what their regulations were, which kept changing, you know, week by week. It was very confusing, and it was scary because, first of all, you know, first you had to spend the money within certain weeks, and there was no way we could do that because we're still half closed. But we were able to do it. We were able to bring people back to work, and we were able to keep going. I'm very grateful for that. How it's gonna play out in the winter, no idea.
Nobody
I think
knows.
it's
Nobody
very
knows, I think.
it's nerve-wracking. It's scary because I don't see, like, if we don't get to open for indoor dining, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't blame, the state government or the city government for doing that. Obviously they want to keep us safe. And obviously it's our responsibility to not get anyone sick in a place of very close contact. I understand. On the other hand, I don't know how we can do it if we don't open up for business. If we open up for business, if we were allowed to open for indoor dining, I don't know how many people are going to come out. The winter's always tough in Bushwick. It's going to be, double as tough as it is.
Well, it's tough in Bushwick. I mean, there's stuff in Bushwick. Yeah.
It's tough in Bushwick.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. That's another thing that I learned. In Manhattan, the great months
Yeah.
are the fall and winter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In Bushwick, it's the other way
The
around.
other way.
Summer's
I didn't know
great,
that.
and
Okay.
the winter is really bad. And so now we're expecting double bad, because now what we are doing is thinking of ways to survive, and we're introducing new things to the menu. For instance, we're doing pizzas,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
and not tlayudas, which are often thought of as the Mexican pizza, because actual pizzas with Mexican ingredients.
Right. I've seen them on your Instagram. They
And
look
they're
fantastic.
great and they're tasty, and not to do a commercial or anything, but really what we are thinking about is like, okay, if we have to shut down, if there's another lockdown, or if no one's coming in, then we obviously need to be able to send things out
You
on
have
delivery
to focus on takeout.
constantly. That can be practical, pragmatic, and that people will
Affordable. Yeah.
affordable.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to think that far ahead. If we have to shut down, well, that's another story. But it's scary. It's an uncertain, uncharted territory that everyone in New York is going through. Everyone in the world, and everyone that owns a restaurant in New York understands. And the only thing is, like, we have to be supportive of each other.
Yeah.
Right now, I try to go to my friends' places as much as I can, spend and tip, and whatever I can do, if I can order stuff through my restaurant to give to them, whatever, like things that are, you honestly, you have to cut a few corners right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm willing to do that because I think we all have to help each other survive, and we all have to make sure that, we remain what makes New York exciting and fun to be, and what provides employment for a lot of people who come to New York and want to do exciting things with their lives and bring something to the city.
Right. And New York will always be exciting.
New York will
Well,
always
I'll
be.
always
New
be-
York
I'm
will
s-
bounce back.
I'm so sick of all this talk of like, oh, New York is dead.
Oh
and
my
it's
God!
dying.
Did you read
and,
that? Did you read
the
the
New Yorker article? Or?
No, the Jerry Seinfeld, the article.
Maybe a part of New York might die.
No.
And in,
But then,
and-
but then
and,
it grows again. And
No, it'll grow.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a part of New York that needs to die. New York was, not to get too political, but New York was the experiment for neoliberalism in the 70s. And a lot of the people that people look back on about the excitement of the early 80s, which you lived through.
Right. Well,
It was-
neoliberalism with Koch and that whole era. Or?
It was breaking the back of the city, and I'm not particularly nostalgic about. I didn't live through it, but I don't think it was. I'm not that nostalgic about it. There's a great documentary, Hyper Realization, by Adam Curtis on the BBC. Just
Okay.
watch that, and I don't have that nostalgia that kids have for like this false nostalgia because I didn't live through it, but of like, oh, the early 80s and the Ramones and Blondie. I'm so glad I didn't live through that.
So, Oscar, thank you so much for your conversation tonight.
No,
Yes,
thank
thank
you guys
you.
for having me. Thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank
And
you.
Yeah.
Do you want
It's a
to
beautiful spot that you guys have in a beautiful
do you want to tell our audience like where they can find you or
If you guys
any-
ever want to come have some good mezcal and really good
the
Mexican
best
food
mezcal and the best
Brooklyn.
Mexican food.
Yeah.
in Bushwick, 41 Wilson Avenue, friendly place, great music, and obviously very good Mexican food and a lot of mezcal or any Mexican sweets.
I think we mentioned mezcal a couple of times.
That's the ad of the week.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thank you
guys.
you.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun to be here.
All right, we'll see you next week. All right.